Hi, and welcome to Philosophy with Phil, with me, Phil Cohen. I've got two videos that we're going to do on Shavuos. The first one is going to be going through the names of Shavuos and explaining a little bit about those. And the second one is going to feed off that and focus on one particular aspect of the Yom Tov, of the festival. So, firstly, let's go through the names of Shavuos. It's called, in the Torah, Chag HaKotzir, or Yom HaKotzir, the festival of the harvest. It marked the beginning of the wheat harvest. Chag Shavuos, obviously, is the name we call it, the festival of weeks. It's because it's 7 weeks after Pesach, on the second day of Pesach, I should say. It's called Chag HaBikurim. It's the day on which the first fruits were brought. And Chag HaTzeres, it's called more in the Talmud, the festival of restraint or coming together. Similar names used for Shmini Atzeres, the festival that falls straight after Sukkot. Interesting to look at why Shavuos falls 7 weeks after Pesach, whereas Shmini Atzeres falls directly after Sukkot. But we can look at that maybe at Sukkot time. I should point out, firstly, that Shavuos falls on the 6th of Sivan, whereas the Torah was given on the 7th. Obviously, outside of Israel, we mark both days because we always have 2 days for Yom Tov. But we mark it as the day that we were prepared and ready for the giving of the Torah, not necessarily the giving of the Torah itself. I should also point out that the Torah doesn't call Shavuos a Chag, doesn't use that name. It uses those names for the other two festivals, but it says Yom HaShavuos, Yom HaKotzir, Yom HaBikurim. Why? Because it's a shorter festival. It's only 1 day or 2 days, whereas the others are 7 or 8 days. Okay. So Chag HaKotzir, the festival of the harvest, it's the beginning of the wheat harvest, whereas the barley harvest started at Pesach time and goes on until Sukkot. The wheat harvest starts at Shavuos and also goes on to Sukkot. And you can see how the three festivals tie in with the agricultural calendar. But it represents a season of transition from God's ownership, if you like, or the crops being under the influence of the climate out in the fields, to them being harvested and then brought into silos, and they're there under the responsibility of man. They're looked after by man. There's that transition there. And similarly, with Zman Matan Torah, we celebrate that with the Torah. The Torah was up in heaven and it was given over to us. If you like, it was owned by God and then given over to us. Transition, to use the Hebrew word reshus, it was from God's reshus to our reshus. But it's totally owned by us. It's our acquisition on Shavuos. And it's ours to interpret as we are, and that's why you have, as we will, and that's why we have so many different commentaries and meta-commentaries on the Torah. And it should also point out that yes, it's written in Hebrew, but that's a language we can all easily learn, and it's not like it was written in Latin, where that Latin was saved for the clergy, and only the clergy are allowed to study it. The Torah is accessible to anyone, and in fact everyone is encouraged and obligated to learn as much of the Torah as they can, and to use it in their daily lives. We also drink milk or eat dairy products on Shavuos. I'm sure most of us will enjoy some nice cheesecake. But again, that also represents the transition from the embryo or fetus being under the control of being fed by the umbilical cord or through the placenta, to it having the milk directly from the mother. No transition, direct relationship. No intermediary, a direct relationship there. And that direct relationship represents our marriage, if you like, to God. Our relationship with God is consummated on Shavuos. If you like, the Pesach was the engagement, the initial meeting where we came face to face with God in a way no other nation has ever done, to being Shavuos where we got the mass revelation, where we all received the Torah. And it was a direct relationship with no other distractions. One cute way I've heard of putting it is that there are no mitzvahs on Shavuos. There's no shofar to blow, there's no matzah to eat, there's no specific mitzvahs for Shavuos. The reason for that is we don't want anything to get in the way of our relationship. For example, imagine a newly married couple comes home for the first time after their wedding. They're there together for the first time with each other. They're walking through their new home, ready for their new life together. And the wife turns to the husband and says, "Do you mind changing that light bulb? There's a bit of washing up to do." And I don't want to denigrate mitzvahs because they're there to bring us closer to God. But on Shavuos, we don't need them. We don't need any distractions. We don't need the chores. We don't need to go through all of those machinations as a way of bringing us closer to God. We are there. We're there with His Torah, and we learn from His Torah. There were many rabbis, saints in the Talmud that would fast often as a way of bringing themselves closer and enhancing their relationship with God. But there were 2 days of the year that they didn't fast, and that was on Purim. Obviously, they had to have a Suda on Purim, but also on Shavuos. They had to celebrate Shavuos by eating and enjoying the festival and enjoying the Torah, by living it. The Baal HaTurim, one of the commentaries on the Torah, points out that in Numbers chapter 38, verse 30, Bamidbar 38, verse 30, whereas every other festival has a sin offering that's associated with it, the offering on Shavuos, yes, there was a sin offering, but it's not directly called a sin offering. Again, there's that sense of newness, fresh, we're starting again, new Torah, new everything. We don't want to talk about sins. Yes, we do make the offering nonetheless, but we don't want to refer to it directly by name. Chag HaBikurim, the festival of the first fruits from the 5 species. There were actually 7, but there were only 5 that were fruits. That are listed in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 8, were brought on Shavuos. They could be brought up until Hanukkah, but that was the first opportunity people could have, and since everyone had to come to the temple anyway, so they would bring their first fruits on there. That would be an ideal time for them to bring them. And we like to bring things at the first time we can. And if you can imagine the scene, the Kohen had these baskets and baskets of fruits that the various farmers had brought. And they would also the Kohen would also wave loaves, wheat loaves obviously, but loaves of bread in front of the altar, along with the Bikurim, along with the first fruits. Now ordinarily, fruits were specifically, it's called in Torah honey, but actually it means jam or chutney. But chumutz, loaves, bread, leaven, and honey, as in fruit honey, as in these jams or anything, wouldn't be brought on the altar, certainly couldn't be offered up. But on Shavuos, as with 1 or 2 other rare occasions, these were waved in front of the altar. They weren't offered up on the altar, but they were eaten later by the Kohanim. And the idea there, the Malbim explains, is that there's a sense of maturity here, that the 2 loaves of bread that are chomutz and the fruit can be compared to the food that we had on Pesach, which was matzah, dry, lifeless matzah, and the morah, the bitter herbs that we had there. Compare the two. The comparison between the two is quite stark. And also the Omer offering that was brought on the 2nd day of Pesach, which is made of barley, versus this offering, which is made of wheat. Again, barley being an animal food versus wheat, which is a man-made food. The humans are more inclined to eat bread than animals. There's a sense of maturity that we've gained over the Omer period, over the 7-week period between the first days of Pesach and Shavuos. And that maturity is like a character refinement. Again, I'll talk about that in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching. Chag Sameach, and as I say, there'll be another video following shortly.